Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, this is Sesa.
Yes, Prabhuji, we are very grateful to you for accepting our request. Just a brief introduction about His Grace Sesa Prabhu. His Grace Sesa Prabhu, he was having a career as an athlete and officer at West Point Military Academy. But then when he came in contact of Srila Prabhupada's wonderful teachings, he joined Srila Prabhupada's Sankirtan army in 1973. And as at that time everybody was doing book distribution, so he served as a BBT library book distributor, and also he held the services as president of the Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. ISKCON temples. Then, later on, after marrying, he earned a degree in law and served as a trustee for the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. His fellow GBC members and other devotees regard him as an exemplary householder and a fair-minded, hard-working advocate of conciliation and cooperation. And his classes are also very, very thoughtful and full of realizations in the service of Srila Prabhupada. So we are very grateful to His Grace Sesa Prabhu for giving us his time at this very difficult time which we are all going through. So we request him please enlighten us about Dharma's glories so that we can accept his mood of service to Srila Prabhupada and serve in this moment throughout our life. Let us welcome and express our gratitude to His Grace Sesa Prabhu by one time chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra with raised hands. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sesa Prabhu ki.
Thank you all very much for giving me this opportunity to join with you and trying to bring some solace to all of our hearts concerning the passing of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. I must admit that the last time I was in Ujjain, it was a much happier occasion. We were there for the GBC midterm meetings and seeing all the wonderful progress that's made in Srila Prabhupada's movement by the devotees in Ujjain was very, very encouraging. The welcome was very gracious. We had some significant breakthroughs in our meetings there because of the facilities you gave to us. So I want to thank you for that. And as I said, today is a different kind of meeting, one that is approached with a heavy heart. So I'll just offer my obeisances and then try to speak something of solace. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Kumadavani Ucharane Nirvishesha Sunyabari Paschachade Satan Vanchakava Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Tita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj Ki. So Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj Ki. So Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj Ki. I thought it might be a good place to begin this morning by meditating on the holy Vapu of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. You may know that the process has begun to transfer Maharaj back to India and ultimately on to Sridham Mayapur, where he'll be placed in Samadhi. When the schedule was given to the GBC members of this journey for Maharaj, it mentioned that we should meditate at each stage, praying for the safe and complete journey of Maharaj without difficulty to Sridham Mayapur. So at present, according to that schedule, Maharaj's Vapu is in New York, waiting for about 12 hours or so before boarding a flight to New Delhi from New York City, JFK. From Delhi, he'll be transferred by private jet carrier to Kolkata, and on to Kolkata by motor way, special vehicle. And then finally, once arriving in Mayapur on the 13th, placed into Samadhi. I had a unique perspective on this whole matter, being so close to Orlando here in Alachua. And it gave me a view of the significance and greatness of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. Because although it seemed like local activities were going on here within 1 or 2 hours drive here, that way, all the events were taking place. But the impact was reverberating around the entire globe. An outpouring of grief for Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj from all corners of the globe. It was quite an impressive experience that just impressed upon me more than my experience with Maharaj had, how great a Vaishnava he is, he was, and what a loss to the world this has been. In a sense, he's coming back home to you there in Ujjain. It was from there that he gave the 3-4 minute talk that I think every devotee in ISKCON around the world has seen 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times over the last week, in which Maharaj explained why he was traveling back to the West. His purpose was the same reason that Srila Prabhupada wanted to travel to the West near the end of his manifest pastimes with us, because he felt the strong call of preaching. He had plans and had developed those plans in his DeLand project, not far from here in Florida, USA, from which the Western peoples could get an opportunity to experience Krishna consciousness. You know very well that was his meditation. And he wanted to travel back to lead that preaching with the DeLand Project as his base. Of course, Krishna's had another plan, and now he's headed back to you. But I want to mention a few things about what we have lost and what we have not lost in the events of the last week. But before we get into that, just one note about our responsibility to you. When I say our, I mean Bhakti Charu Maharaj's God brothers and God sisters. We have and take gladly an obligation to serve you, to help you, to do anything we can to enable you to remain strong in your Krishna consciousness despite the loss of such a wonderful Guru Maharaj. Sorry. The question is, how can a disciple, maybe a young disciple, face his whole life without his dear Guru Maharaj to be there to guide him at every step along the way? I think that Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj's life even before coming in contact or reawakening his eternal relationship with Srila Prabhupada, even before then, his life gives you as disciples lessons for how to continue on in your Krishna consciousness despite such a loss. And again, for many of you, at a very early stage of your practice in Krishna consciousness. If we read Maharaj's book, Ocean of Mercy, particularly the parts about his early life, we can get some lessons that'll help all of us persevere throughout our lives in following his orders and his example. In his autobiography, Bhakti Charu Maharaj describes his early life, where he was separated from his mother at the age of 7 years old, as she contracted and was suffering from TB. Later, she died. He was still a young boy. His father, somehow or another, wasn't inspired to maintain the family after that. And so, young Maharaj found himself in a situation that essentially is close to what you as disciples are experiencing. Again, especially those at a young stage in their lives of Krishna consciousness. But what did Maharaj do? How did he overcome the difficulties of lacking a father or mother at such a young stage of his life? But if you read in the Ocean of Mercy, you'll see that there were some ups and downs, but ultimately he found shelter with his uncle and auntie. This is a very important lesson that we can learn from his life. We shouldn't think, oh, it's just a mundane part before he met Srila Prabhupada. We can't learn anything from that. No. We can learn a lot from the entire life of the Acharya. They're not ordinary people. So he took shelter of his uncle and auntie. We encourage you to also take shelter of us, your uncles and aunties, so that we may do our duty to you, do our loving obligation to you, to guide you in any way you may need to execute Krishna consciousness and stay fixed throughout your whole life. Ultimately, we see also from Ocean of Mercy what a glorious life Maharaj led, even coming out from an unfortunate situation during an early point in his life. So that's the first thing we can learn from Ocean of Mercy and Maharaj's life, supposedly before Krishna consciousness. The second thing we can learn comes later in that book, when it describes how Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, now an initiated sannyas disciple of his dying grace, Srila Prabhupada, and his very close friend and mentor, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj, together were placing His divine grace in samadhi. By working together as God brothers, they accomplished that task, which was also difficult when the world is falling apart around you, as it was during those times of Prabhupada's departure. Solace was to be found in doing service with your God brothers. That's the example we get from that section of Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj's life. That by working cooperatively together, God brothers can find the instruction and example of their Guru Maharaj and become inspired to accomplish his mission. So taking shelter of your uncles and aunties and working cooperatively together as God brothers and God sisters, these lessons from Maharaj's life will help us as we face what at this point in time seems like a very long journey through life without the physical presence of your Guru Maharaj. So what exactly did we lose when Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj departed from this world? It's actually an unprecedented situation. So much outpouring all over the globe. An outpouring of hearts broken over the loss of certain things, which I'm going to try to enumerate here this morning, just so that we can understand the magnitude of our loss, as well as the opportunities we have for great fortune by understanding what we have not lost. So what did we lose? And these are just my realizations, my personal feelings. I was fortunate to have a relationship with Maharaj that I treasure as an individual. And so when I speak of what we have lost, I speak of it as an individual, Seshadas, servant of the Vaishnavas. First, we've lost the footprints of a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, from this earth. We know that the presence of pure Vaishnavas is the only thing that really matters in this world. It's the only real good fortune for this world, the only auspiciousness. As long as pure devotees walk on this earth, the conditioned living entities have an opportunity to get out of ignorance and return suffering and return home back to Godhead. Only by the Vaishnavas is this possible, the pure Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. By their mercy in coming here, we have the opportunity. And so what a loss it is for those of us that may be beginning to become awake, and for those who have not yet had the opportunity to become awake. What a loss it is for the world to lose the presence of a pure Vaishnava, devotee of the Lord. That's not up to us to By Krishna's mercy, he sends his representatives. By his will, he takes them back. But indeed, it is a loss for us that we must somehow or another try to overcome. The second loss is the pure example set by Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj on faith and surrender to his Guru. I was talking with another devotee earlier today, yesterday, your time, about what is good fortune and what is bad fortune or ill fortune in this world. And we concluded that good fortune is to have a bona fide spiritual master, but to execute on that good fortune, one has to have unflinching faith and devotion, love for one's Guru. It's not good enough just to have that relationship, but to act in that relationship, to develop that relationship. That's the real good fortune. And so Bhakti Charu Maharaj exhibited this quality of full surrender and faith in Srila Prabhupada. He wasn't distracted by other types of allurements, being his own independent guru, whatever it may be. I personally witnessed at so many initiations that Bhakti Charu Swami would question each candidate. What are the four regulative principles? How many rounds do you chant of Hare Krishna every day? And then came the question of his dedication and faith to Srila Prabhupada, asking his disciples to vow that they'll never leave ISKCON. Someone as a powerful a guru as Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj could easily just start his own society and do his own thing, not have to have allegiance, not have to have the trouble of working with God brothers in an institution. He could start his own. But that kind of thought never crossed his mind. He was completely surrendered to Srila Prabhupada and never considered himself independent of. You probably heard him yourself say so many times, if the GBC asked me to stop initiating, he said I couldn't initiate, then I'd stop. He was completely surrendered to his Guru, and in that way showed an example to us of chastity. That's very important. So we should remember that about him. We've lost that if we let that example slip from our minds and our beings, then we really lost something significant. The next thing that we've lost is a pure example of how to focus on loving relationships between devotees. The first time that I met, well, not the first time, but one of the first times I met Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj was in Vrindavan. I think it was around 79 or 80, sometime around there. He was teaching a course on Vaishnava etiquette. I think that's the first time that subject was taught amongst the devotees in ISKCON. Such a valuable topic as we see as time has progressed. We're in this material world, we're conditioned beings, and so what happens? Conflict inevitably arises. Well, how do you deal with it then? How in a Christian conscious way do you deal with it? Just like any other thing that comes up in this material world, disease, hunger, whatever, there's a way to deal with it. It's natural these things arise in the material creation, but we have to learn how to deal with them. So it's natural that sometimes strife may come there between the devotees. So how do we deal with it? How do we prevent these things from arising? And how do we deal with them once they have arisen? This is a subject matter of the Vaishnava etiquette that was championed by Bhakti Charu Swami. Now there's so many courses people teach, and that's wonderful. But he was the first to understand and realize this because devotee relationships were so very important to him and to a functioning Krishna conscious society. In any conflict that he dealt with as a GBC member, that was a primary consideration in how the problem would be resolved. How were the devotees being taken care of? Now there's a whole branch in ISKCON started by a strategic planning team. But again, if we go back to who pioneered concern for devotee, devotee care, it goes back to the heart of Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. Always concerned how the devotees were cared for. And that wasn't limited to just times when there was strife. You all know and seen it hundreds of times there in Ujjain when devotees come and visit Maharaj. He would greet them. When did you come? You need anything? Your accommodations are taken care of nicely? He didn't have to do those things. After all, he was the guru of everyone. But he took that as a service and wanted to facilitate his disciples. Earlier this week, we had a ceremony for remembering Bhakti Charu Maharaj here in Alachua, Florida. And one young devotee was explaining how she and her sister, as teenagers, had the fortune of being invited by Bhakti Charu Swami to travel with him in Europe during the summer months when they were out of school. And they told how he, Maharaj, took personal concern for their care and needs during the travel. Not just that, okay, you can travel with me and, make it on your own. But he took time to make sure that they were facilitated nicely. He did this for my family as well. We went to his retreats that are held around this time in July every year here in North America. Last few years it's been in DeLand, which is, as I said, just close to here. So we went one year and we weren't planning on staying. We thought we'd drive down for the day and then drive back up. He would have nothing of it. No, you're staying here. But Maharaj, we don't have anything. We didn't prepare to come prepared to stay over. Don't worry, whatever you need, I'll take care of. He cleaned out in a room in the house where he was living and graciously took care of all our needs so that we could stay for the seminar and not have to drive up and then drive back the next day. He didn't have to do that, but he did it out of love and concern. He wanted to express that to us. And it's changed our lives to this very day, how he treated us like that. That is a great loss, to be able to have someone so caring to look to your every need, even though they don't need to. It satisfies the heart. That's the type of Vaishnava he was. Another thing that we've lost, and these next two items are extremely important. The next thing that we've lost is a Vaishnava historian. Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj was our link to our recent acharyas, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Gaur Kishoredas Babaji, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He's a Vaishnava historian. He knows everything about their lives and the Vaishnava revival movement that took place with Bhaktivinoda Thakur, developed by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, executed by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, and gives us the heritage in which we live and operate every day in our practice of Krishna consciousness. He knows all the histories of Gaudiya Math, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's preaching activities, and he portrayed them so nicely in his Abhacharan series. Every year in Mayapur, during the GBC meetings, he would give the class on Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's appearance day. And he would meet with the other Gaudiya missions as they have a big procession that day down Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Road to the Yoga Peak. He represented ISKCON in those meetings. So necessary ties to our Gaudiya family, he was a key to that. And losing him is a big loss in terms of our connection in the Sampradaya. Maharaj also provided a very important cultural key to the success of ISKCON. I don't know that this can ever be replaced. Having the experience with Western culture that's described in Ocean of Mercy that he obtained when he was studying in Germany and traveling around in Europe, made him a unique figure on the GBC. Someone who could understand both Western culture and his own Eastern culture. I don't mean to bring up bodily consciousness, that's the last thing that could be spoken about or should be spoken about. But the fact is that we are an international society and we have different cultural backgrounds that we bring to this society. So for someone to know and be comfortable and working with and understanding both Eastern and Western culture is a very important asset to working together cooperatively. Prabhupada wanted us to come together and work for unity and diversity. This East-West cultural differences could be seen like that. He wanted the GBC to discuss how to achieve unity and diversity. And of course, he gave us that famous example of the lame man and the blind man, where the lame man was Eastern culture, and the blind man was Western culture. Neither one can do much by themselves, but together they can get up and walk and make progress. So Prabhupada recognized this might be an issue, and therefore devotees like Bhakti Charu Swami, who could bridge the gap, were very important to achieving this goal of unity and diversity. And so his loss in this regard is what I personally think is the most devastating part of his departure. Because it takes years to cultivate that ability and the ability to be in and experience different cultures. So Maharaj offered that service and was often involved in areas of the world in his GBC responsibility that were troubled. But we had, as GBC, had no trouble assigning him there because we knew he knew the culture. And that wouldn't be an issue in resolving the problems that those individual yatras faced. So in my mind, this is a big loss, and I'm praying hard to Srila Prabhupada to understand how to overcome it now that we have lost Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. And that brings me to the last loss. And I want to spend all the time talking about how we've lost everything, because it's not loss in the material sense of the word. But an important loss that I think all of us should feel to one degree or another is the loss of a good friend. I feel that way. And if you read the various offerings from various leaders and ISKCON, GBC members, initiating spiritual masters, a theme runs through them that says that I feel as if I lost my best friend. Srila Prabhupada's disciple, Mula Prakriti Dasi, wrote a book about Srila Prabhupada in which he interviewed Gaudiya Vaishnavas that knew Srila Prabhupada prior to his going to the West. And she called it A Friend to All. And her theme was how Srila Prabhupada transcended differences and was actually a friend to all Gaudiya Vaishnavas, all living entities. I believe that Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj had and has a spiritual opulence, a spiritual ability, not a material ability, a spiritual ability to interact with each person he met in a very personal, friendly manner. Just like Krishna is seated in everyone's heart and has a personal relationship. Each one of us have a personal relationship with Krishna. his devotee, Krishna's devotee, can also display that opulence of being a friend to everyone. And that means that in interaction with Maharaj, we felt honored, we felt relevant, we felt respected, we felt heard, we felt valued. He made everyone feel that. We all know from our own honest experience that that's a very hard thing to do. Can I do that with everyone I meet and interact with? I don't think so, as much as I may try. But read the testimony, read the homages that people, the devotees are putting out, and you'll see that all of them had this type of an experience with Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. That he made them feel as if no one else in the world mattered as much as they did to him. So we've lost that. We've lost a friend. How we overcome that remains to be seen. But we must overcome it, or realize that we've not lost it. And that's the next thing I wanted to talk about, is what we haven't lost. What we haven't lost. Well, basically that comes down to two things. We haven't lost his example, especially with modern technology. And modern technology may not be worth much other than preserving the example of a pure Vaishnava. And we see that so many times in terms of Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, how he carried himself as a Vaishnava, how he interacted with his godbrothers, interacted with his disciples, interacted with the devotees in general. He set a perfect example. And you'll find that in the words describing him as perfect Vaishnava gentleman. I happen to live in Alachua, Gainesville, Florida, where Prabhupada spoke those words when he was asked a question by a reporter. Swamiji, how will we know your disciples or your followers when we see them? And Prabhupada's answer was, you'll know they're my followers because they will be perfect gentlemen. So that was Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, a perfect gentleman. And so how a gentleman acts, we should also act. For by acting, by imitating, not badly imitating, but in a good way, imitating, let's say emulating, not imitating, emulating his qualities, his example, then we haven't lost that. We haven't lost him. We're still holding tight to him. So by his example, and then by his instructions. Again, we're fortunate to have technology where so many of those instructions can be heard time and time again. Indeed, I saw in Dandavats just yesterday, there was a 3-minute clip of Maharaj where he was explaining what to do when one's guru leaves this world. We can hear his instructions about the very situation that we're experiencing. If we do that, then we won't lose him. These two things, his example, his instructions, they constitute Vani. Vapu will be placed in Samadhi 1 or 2 days. We can go there and lament our hearts out. But the Vani, his instructions, his example, that's what we will have to live every day. We'll have to live that every day. So if we follow those two things, then we haven't lost. We haven't lost Maharaj. So I'm not exactly sure what the program for this session is, but if any, I don't know if I'm supposed to take questions, but if I am supposed to take questions, maybe I can take them now, or as you would like, I could relate some anecdotes of my association with Maharaj, which I think characterize him as a Vaishnava. So maybe you can let me know what you want me to do at this point.
You can narrate the pastime. You can narrate the anecdotes with Maharaj.
I can tell the anecdotes. Okay, I don't know if that's what you said now, but that's what I'll do. Tell the anecdotes. Well, perhaps it doesn't come as a surprise to you all who had the opportunity to serve him daily for months at a time. But devotees always like to tell stories about Maharaj and pizza. Actually, just yesterday, the Devotee Swami was talking about the first time he met Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And Maharaj told him, Devotee Swami had an ashram of young boys that he used to take care of. And when Maharaj came and met and talked to the young boys, he suggested that they have a pizza party. And so the Devotee Swami called up the pizza maker in the community, and pizza started flying towards the group of young boys and Bhakti Charu Maharaj and the Devotee Swami. And those boys, just put yourself in the position of those young boys. Sannyasis were on reverence type of relationships. Bhakti Charu Maharaj came in and destroyed that stereotype. And to this day, those boys still have a very fond and affectionate relationship, feelings towards Bhakti Charu Maharaj, because you ate pizza with them. And while they were eating the pizza, Maharaj asked, well, isn't there a girls' ashram here also? So there was a young girls' ashram. So the Devotee Swami called up the ladies in charge of that ashram, and they brought the girls over with more pizzas. And everyone had a wonderful time with Maharaj. That's the kind of person he was, personally caring about an individual and showing interest in them. He also paid for the pizza. I had another experience with Maharaj that amazed me at his kindness. Kindness not just to devotees, but to ordinary people. I took Maharaj, when he was visiting here in Alachua, I took him to a pharmacy where he had to get a flu shot because he was going to visit Chaitanya Swami Maharaj. They didn't want anybody visiting Maharaj without getting a flu shot because they couldn't risk the contamination of Maharaj getting the flu. So I took him to a pharmacy in a crowded shopping center. And when we came out, there was a young boy. I think he belonged to Boy Scouts. I think they call it Bharat Scouts in India. But that, he was a Boy Scout. He was maybe 11, 12 years old. He was standing in front of a table selling popcorn to people to raise money for their Boy Scout activities. Nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. Totally absorbed in the material world, lost to any knowledge of the true self or prasadam. But on the way out, going completely out of his way, without any necessity of having to interact, Maharaj stopped and engaged that small boy in conversation. What are you doing? What are you collecting for? Oh, how are you doing? Are people giving you, are they giving you donations? He's just talking to the boy in a very friendly way. And here's a young American boy, knows nothing about Krishna consciousness, knows nothing probably about the world, what to speak of a sannyasi dressed in robes with a shaved head, something completely foreign to him. But he charmed the boy's heart. And he bought some popcorn from the boy also. And as we were walking away to the car after he said goodbye to this boy, he turned to me and said, I wanted to encourage him. That's why I talked to him. He wanted to encourage him. He wanted to encourage everybody. And this boy was fortunate to get it. I can't imagine how that fortune, it goes back to a pure devotee walking the earth, as I said earlier. Can't imagine what that boy's future will be, having had the opportunity to interact with Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj on such a friendly level so early in his life. So I have my own pizza stories, but I think that I'll stop there. And if there are any questions or comments or anything, we can use the last few minutes we have to talk about them. Or we can leave early. So I'm your servant. Please let me know what you'd like me to do.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. There are two questions. If you want, you can answer them.
Okay.
So, one is by His Grace Jagat Jivan Prabhu. As when Prabhupada left this world, all of you were shelterless. But in one sense, we are fortunate that we have spiritual uncles like your grace. But now to develop that connectivity with others as we have with His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Guru Maharaj.
Yes, that's where you have to go beyond talking and we have to actually do. You actually have to do that. And so that's our challenge, to accept the kindness that Bhakti Swami Maharaj showered on us that makes us feel that he's our best friend. We have to reciprocate with that and show him that we are concerned for his disciples and that if they need anything, any kind of shelter, that they can find it amongst us. Not find excuses why we can't, but find opportunities why we should. So I hope that I can do that where I live here. Of course, I do a little traveling for GBC work. But where I live here, there are a few your God brothers and God sisters that I've been interacting with since Maharaj fell sick with the COVID virus, and others that I've known at a distance. I've been in contact with a number of them, and I hope to serve them more. That's just my efforts as an individual. As a society, especially as the leadership of the society, as the GBC, the chairman, and his messages to us, since we got the news about Maharaj, have always encouraged, be concerned about the disciples of Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj that are in your areas, and offer them any shelter they need. It's been a top priority in the GBC response to this. So we have to make it real. And I don't think there's any hesitancy, because we did receive a lot from Maharaj, and we want to be repay him by giving him and his disciples a lot at this point in time.
Another question by Premodar Das. Can you please narrate something about Brooklyn Temple pastime? You spoke in your offering.
Yes, the general. Actually, when Bhakti Charu Maharaj gave his 3-4 minute talk before he left Ujjain, he was talking about that, wasn't he? He said, if I'm supposed to be a general, then I have to go to the front of the lines. And so a general, he showed in facing some of the hostility that was involved with regaining control, GBC control of the temple in Brooklyn. He showed some qualities of a general in fighting a battle that appear to be uncharacteristic for him. So yes, I did write about that in the Glorification of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. But I was talking with my godbrother Guru Garanga Das Prabhu about that, because he was also working together with us at that time. And he mentioned some additional things that happened in that event where Maharaj exhibited such courage, spiritual courage and tenacity. He reminded me that when Maharaj was speaking on the microphone, reestablishing GBC authority, that they cut the power to the microphone, and then somebody replugged it in, and then somebody turned off the lights in the temple, so it went dark all of a sudden. The whole temple was dark, and then a kirtan was started to try to drown out Maharaj. So through all these, and again, it was a tense atmosphere. Devotees had a very bad attitude toward the GBC, and they wanted to take the temple away from ISKCON. So it was a very tense situation, but Maharaj, and he went alone, by the way. It wasn't like he went in, with a whole big entourage or other GBCs by his side. He went in alone and showed himself as that general he was talking about when in his speech about leaving Ujjain to go preach. Maintaining ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada's positions was something very important, and he was willing to act uncharacteristically as a fighter, as a firebrand, as I said in that piece, or with a iron fist in a glove, as my godbrother Guru Guranga says about that incident. So it was something to be proud of to see Maharaj take up that responsibility in uncharacteristic ways for him to serve Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. So thank you very much, Prabhuji, for giving your valuable association. We have His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj also with us.
Bhakti Prem Swami.
Bhakti Charu Maharaj is there. I will just
Oh, very Hare Krishna.
Thank you for a wonderful association. You are very dear to Guru Maharaj. And not only that, Guru Maharaj's last dream to develop something in USA. And for accomplish that idea, you are the only one person. So Guru Maharaj shared so many thoughts with you regarding you. So what Guru Maharaj want to do, you know better than me. So please guide us what Guru Maharaj wanted. We are under your shelter.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. We have to talk, of course. The last week has been difficult to talk about the future.
Yes.
That's always there. So yes, we have to talk. But
I'll come there and take guidance how to
that
develop
would be good.
that D-Land project under your shelter.
It'd be good to see you here. Please come. If the flights allow, I don't know what they're doing and everything. But thank you.
Done.
Hare Krishna. So we are very thankful to His Grace Sesha Prabhu and also to his good wife, Her Grace Madhumati Mataji, because she only arranged all the things, all these classes, and also like it's quite late there at all at Arachua. It would be around 11:30 around it would be, and at
11:30.
11:30 night. So, but mercifully, Prabhuji accepted our invitation to speak something about Guru Maharaj and give us inspiration and solace. So, we will thanks Prabhuji by loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. His Grace Shisha Prabhu ki jai. His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Yeah.
His Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lord
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada.